All right, everybody. I meant to do this review earlier in the week, but now it's not because I'm sick, but um, I I've been working a lot at one of my part-time jobs, so I wasn't able to record a or do a review of anything until now. So that being said, with this movie hitting its 30th anniversary recently, I decided for this week to review Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which, well, I'm assuming that anyone who's watching this video, however few there may be, I'm assuming that you've probably seen the movie. And if you aren't, why are you even watching this? If why would you watch a review to a movie you haven't seen yet? Anyway, so the story. Let me adjust this. The story basically follows Indy back again on the big screen as he tries to find and rescue his father, but along the way he gets caught up in a more elongated quest to not only save his father, but also save the Holy Grail from, once again, the Nazis. And the main story takes place in 1938, so it does make sense because this was about a year before the Germans invaded Poland, and all that happened for you history buffs out there. And is it okay? It's raining outside. I just wanted to see how hard it was raining. So this time, I think that one of the many there's a lot of good things I can say about this movie. One is that it's kind of cool to see Indiana Jones in a little more of a vulnerable, a little more insecure, because the bulk of the movie focuses on him reconnecting and reestablishing a healthy relationship with his father. Because as the movie says at one point, they haven't really talked to each other that much in the past 20 years. So there is a lot of tension there, and Indy's father does kind of come off as sort of the benign, annoying parent. But as the movie progresses, what makes it interesting is that the movie progresses, they get closer and closer and closer until they're back together in a healthy family relationship. And they still get on each other's nerves, but it's not as tense as it was before. And another thing I can say was pretty interesting is that there's a prologue that takes up, I think, about the first 10 minutes of the movie, where it's it's basically about Indiana Jones as a 13-year-old, having one of his first adventures, and you learn a lot of things. You learn where he got the fedora. You learn how he used the whip. You learn how he got the scar on his chin, which is actually kind of a nice little in joke because Harrison Ford. Well, it's not really an in joke at all. It's kind of a nice little reference because Harrison Ford also has a scar on his chin because the actor said he had a car crash when he was 20. So yeah, they kind of tried to show a parallel between the character and the actor, which I think is kind of a cool touch. And the movie, it really does up the action from the first two. That's probably going to happen repeatedly throughout this video, so I apologize if I'm hacking my way through this. Anyway, and I think you got the chase in the beginning, the chase in Venice, you got Indy and his father being chased on a motorcycle, the tank fight, and the tank fight, that's probably the most ambitious that we've seen Indiana Jones, because it's not like the first movie where it's just him going after the Nazi convoy to get the Ark. In this one, it's him, his father, his friend Sala, and his colleague Martin Brody trying to get away from the Nazis and get to the canyon of the Crescent Moon. And one thing I do like about this movie is that it does have it does a really good job at balancing out being lighthearted, dark, and it's a much better blend. Where Temple of Doom was a prequel, that movie was a little too heavy-handed with its dark material that it just became overkill and became unpleasant. I'm not against a dark movie, but if you hammer it into the point where it's not fun anymore, not that interesting, and just miserable, you've made a huge mistake with making your movie a dark film. This one, it goes for a more lighthearted edge, but it doesn't go over the top with it. There's a really good suspenseful scene where right after Indy and his father make it to the temple, and spoilers, Indy's father gets shot in the stomach by one of the main villains, and you don't want the Nazis to get the Grail, but you also don't want Indy to fail at giving the cup of Christ to his dying father. So that's kind of a really good suspense, and that scene goes on for about 15-20 minutes. And another thing I will say is that the lead actress this time does a really good job of portraying, and this is why the betrayal from Elsa Schneider in this movie works better than Mac from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Her character was introduced, likable, and developed enough that you got a sense of who she was before she revealed she was actually a Nazi sympathizer. You know, with Mac from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he just constantly switches sides to whatever benefits him, and we never really got to know him as a character that well before he betrays Indy on the first go around. So it just kind of makes you confused about, should I be shocked for Mac or should I be upset? With this, you can be shocked and upset because you don't see it coming. And the comedy, as we mentioned before, it does lead to one of the funnier jokes in the movie where Indy's father is trying to tell Henry Jones Sr., Sean Connery, is trying to tell Indy, hey, she's a Nazi. Indy doesn't believe him, but then when he finds out the truth, he says, wait, how did you know she was a Nazi again? And then the dad's like, she talks in her sleep. Yeah, she talks in her sleep, and then Indy just looked at him like, what the? So that's kind of a funny moment. And then Indy's father kind of has this bashful, sly smile. He's like, I didn't trust her. Why did you? So that was kind of a funny scene. And it's kind of cool to see Sean Connery be kind of a lovable, goofy character, but still be able to do some business when he has to. There are a few scenes where he's saving people or helping Indy get out of the problems. But, and it is kind of, I think anyone that has a father son connection that's a little strained, I think anyone's going to relate to that. And it kind of shows you that, even if you have years of frustration and, a disconnect, you can still work your way back into a loving relationship if you give it enough time. Oh, and going on an adventure across the globe with Nazis chasing you probably helps too. I don't know. Um, if I had to make one complaint about the movie, is that I think once Elsa reveals herself to be a villain, I think Indy's feelings about her are a little too seesaw. Because he gets angry when she betrays him, and when she goes off to, and when Indy and his father go off to Berlin to try and get the Grail Diary back, Indy finds out that Elsa still has it, and he gets up in her face. He starts berating her for betraying her, and then he pins her against the wall and puts his hand on her throat. It's like, all I have to do is squeeze. So he's basic. So yeah. So you realize this woman is the enemy. You threaten to choke her out, but then you still try to save her at the end. I mean, I get the idea that Indy's the hero, so he's supposed to be, likable enough to root for him, but as much as I complain about him trying to save Elsa at the end of the movie and failing, it does lead into a good moment where Indy is tempted to reach for the Grail and risk dying himself, but his father manages to rescue Indy when he calls Indy by his nickname and not his given name, which is Henry Jones Jr. And that leads to another funny scene where Sala confuses the explanation for Indy's name being he's named after a dog. I mean, this movie is just so warm and lighthearted. It's a very lovable movie. I'm not sure why they gave it a PG-13 rating, because this really is nowhere near as violent as Temple of Doom, which got a PG rating. Raiders, I think, was a little more intense, and that got away with a PG rating, but this probably could have done with a PG rating, to be honest. That's a whole other story for another day. I mean, this was probably the perfect way you could end this series with Indy riding off into the sunset, and then 19 years later, I guess there was more of that ride-off, but as it stands right now, this is a really good film. It's really hard for me to decide which one I like more, Raiders or Last Crusade. I would go more of Raiders because Indy is a little more interesting and mysterious. You don't really know that much about his past. All you really know is that he's this archaeologist that likes to go globetrotting and find artifacts while also being a archaeology professor at a college. So, on the one hand, that's really good because there's a lot of mystery and interest with the character. But in this one, you see more of his sensitive side, which is kind of something you didn't really see that much from Harrison Ford at the time, except for maybe Witness, which came out in '85. So I guess it really picked your very awesome classic film Poison in this case. So thank you all for watching. I'm not sure what I'll be reviewing this week, but I will get back to you guys when I have an